Okay, well, welcome to the show, Weston. How you doing?
Having me. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. I am extremely excited to have you on the show tonight, and I'm going to tell everybody why in a second. But I think you're the youngest one I've had so far.
That's awesome.
And I don't want to say the most talented, but man, once we start talking, you are pretty talented at what you do.
Thank
Um, but let me tell everybody how I met you. Okay. I'm a TikTok guy. I'm an Instagram guy. I'm a YouTube guy, and I'm always scrolling, looking. And you have algorithms feed you different things, and I'm always looking at sports stuff. I'm always looking at mindset stuff. I'm always looking at inspirational stuff. And on TikTok, you kept popping up on my feed. I maybe you popped up once, then I listened. Then the more you listen, the more it pops up. But your messages, and I just want everybody to know, they should look you up on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Is your delivery, your demeanor, your personality, your voice inflection, everything, and how you deliver your messages on your topics, it's excellent. That's all I have to say. It's just excellent. You do such a good job. So when I heard your first one, like, man, this kid's pretty sharp. Then I heard your second one, then your third one. Then I'm watching all the different things you do. So I just want everybody to know that you have an extreme talent of delivering your message.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. I've been enjoying doing it. I started doing it last summer, and it's been a good time, but that means a lot coming from you. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'm excited to ask you a million questions here, but if you don't mind, let everybody know. I mean, you're a Colorado guy, and
Yep.
that's another thing. You're on the other side of the country, and through social media and the impact of it, you and I now we can become friends forever, right?
Yep.
And but tell everybody like a little bit about yourself. Where you're from. What the sports you're playing, and what motivated you or what inspired you to want to play that sport in college, and we'll kind of roll from there.
Yeah. So I've grown up in Denver, Colorado my whole life. And my biggest sport has always been football. So I started playing flag when I was probably 5, got into tackle football when I was 8. And just from when I was a kid, it was like just obsession. Like, I don't know why exactly, but I was completely obsessed with football. It's all I think about, all I wanted to do. Like, my entire life was consumed by football. And then when I was a kid, it was funny growing up in Denver. I was a huge Tom Brady fan. For some reason, like, I watched him on the TV. I was like, all right, Tom Brady is like,
The
that's my,
goat.
I
He's
love
the goat.
exactly. I knew it back in like 2009. And so I was like, that's my idol. So I was wearing Tom Brady jerseys to school. Me and all my friends were getting into arguments, but I grew up wearing number 12 and I was playing QB. And it was always my dream. Like, I'm going to be greater than Tom Brady. I'm going to play in the NFL. That was always like who I looked up to. So then continuing through football, that obsession stuck with me. And it was always my dream, like to play in the NFL, to play in college. And both my parents went to CU Boulder. So it was always a dream of mine as a kid, like, all right, I want to go to the University of Colorado. I want to play football there. And so I'm getting into high school and I was a really late bloomer. So coming into high school freshman year, I was like 5'5". I was like 130 pounds, looked like I was probably 11 years old. I was just not very athletic. I was decent on my youth team just because I was like a good quarterback. I had good accuracy. I could throw well. But when everyone started to hit puberty and I didn't, I was kind of just completely set behind. So the first 2 years of high school, I was just playing on freshman team, a little bit of JV. And then I finally hit a growth spurt, went into my junior year, and I was like able to finally compete for the job. But there was another guy on my team who started over me, and he started our sophomore year. So he was in my grade. And funny, now we're roommates. We're still good friends to this day. But our junior year, we went into the season, he was a starter. And there was like a period in the season where we competed a bit, but he ended up taking a starting job. And so I was the backup all junior year. And then after junior is when COVID happened. And I was thinking about, okay, I need to get ready for college. It's always my dream to play in college, but I have zero film from my high school. I mean, I had probably 70 passing yards or something like that, but I was training really hard and I knew I had some level of skill that I wanted to show. So I was doing like some QB training on the side. I put together a little pro day of me throwing, and I was sending it out to college coaches, sending my grades, everything I could put together. I was just sending it out to as many college coaches as I could find, email, Twitter, everything. And so I got a couple responses, nothing too substantial. And then into my senior year, started looking at colleges to apply to. And I heard back from a couple schools, and it was a weird thing that our state did with COVID, but some teams played in the fall, some teams played in the spring. So we actually played my senior year spring. And so that spring, I think it was like in April, my senior year, maybe in March or April. And you have to decide which college you're going to by May. I heard back from a coach at a Division I FCS school, a smaller school, and he was like, we want to give you a preferred walk-on to our school. And I was just over like
Let's
insanely
go.
excited. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, this is all I need, an opportunity. And I was so excited. So at first I was like, you know, this is it. Like my football opportunity was, you know, that was granted to me. So I was like, all right, that's the school I'm going to. I go and tour the school, and it was a great academic school, like amazing school. I have nothing bad to say about it, but it just wasn't the right fit for me. And I think that was kind of obvious, but I was trying to convince myself to it because I wanted to play football there so badly. And I really knew I've always been a fan of CU, University of Colorado. I've been going to the games since I was a kid. The mountains are right there. Like I was just born to go to that school kind
Yeah,
of.
perfect
I knew that was
setting.
the right place. Exactly. So I was reaching out to some of the coaches, and they were basically telling me that they were going to have walk-on tryouts in the fall. They couldn't guarantee me anything, but if I wanted to try out, I was more than welcome. And so the college decision time is narrowing down. And talking about it with my parents, really thinking about it, I was like, all right, I have to go to the place that's right for me. And I was like, I'm going to go to Colorado and try to walk on, work my tail off to make it happen and take the risk on that. And if it doesn't go my way, I can live with that, but it's worth me. Like that's been a lifelong dream. I was like, I'm okay making that risk.
Your
So I go
parents
to
must have been
Colorado.
jacked up over that, right?
Oh yeah, so excited, so excited. And my dad, he was really helpful about it because I think he knew that was the right decision for me, but he didn't force me to make that decision at all. He let me kind of think through it on my own time. And so when I told him I was doing that, I was like, "Did you think that was the right choice?" He's like, "Oh yeah." I knew that was the right thing for you 3 months ago, but he didn't want to interject because he knew it was my process, which I appreciated that. And it, you know, it's good to go through that process of that decision making process myself. So I go to CU, and I'm like, that summer before freshman year, just all football. Like I'm so focused. It's how I've been my whole life. So I try out in the fall my freshman year, and I do pretty well at tryouts, prepared well. And then the coaches reach out to me and they basically say that the quarterback room is full. There's like 7 or 8 guys they have at the time. But if any of them transfer and like vacate their spot by the time January comes around, I could start winter workouts with the team. So
Okay.
I was a little upset because I wanted like a guaranteed spot. Obviously, that just gives you the peace of mind. But I was like, all right, at least there's some hope. There's some hope. So January comes around, no one transferred, unfortunately. So then I go through spring semester, was having a great time at school, doing well in school, all the above, working hard. And then gearing up for tryouts the next fall. So same thing in the summer, I'm training really hard. And this was a summer I made a lot of progress. Like I really started to learn about how to effectively train, my skills, my mentality, my athleticism, a lot of which I talk about in my videos. This was like a very transformative summer for me. So I worked really hard, come back my sophomore fall, and I make the team. And then they were going through a coaching change at the time. Like the head coach of that season got fired in the middle of the season. So there was an interim coach. And so the coaching staff had a lot going on. And so they initially said, we're going to clear you and put you on the team, kind of like practice squad in the fall. And then you could start normally for winter workouts. But eventually they said, sorry, we're not going to get to you this fall. We're going to clear you after winter break and medically clear you, do all that kind of logistical work and put you on the roster. So I was like, cool. So I was training, and then the coaching change happened, the big coaching change. Coach Prime came in December. And so the coaches who I was in contact with were then gone from the team, essentially. A couple of them stayed, but a big turnover happened, basically.
Right.
So I come back in January, and I go into the office looking for a meeting for a coach, and they tell me that they're going to be walk-on tryouts in May. So I'm like, okay, great. I'll try out again. And at first I was upset, of course. I was like, all right, I thought I had the opportunity, but then a new coaching staff comes in and they have to look through, their roster, and they're making the roster changes. So that's just how it goes. So I was like, all right, I got to re-up and get ready for the next tryouts. So then go through the spring, train really hard again, try out in May. And it was a huge tryout, very different from my previous ones, because the previous ones were only CU students. So it was 35 kids probably at each tryout. This one was like a camp. Athletes from all over the country there. I think there was 350, maybe 400 guys there. It was huge. And so tried out there, and unfortunately just never heard back after it. I don't think, no QBs made it from the tryout. I think only 2 players made it from that tryout. I know one of them because I worked out with him beforehand. And so I think it was like a tight end and a linebacker. So 2 out of 400, it was a huge, huge event.
Yeah.
But so that's just how it went out. And so, but throughout that all, I think the most important thing for me was just like that whole experience really taught me the importance of like setting ambitious goals for myself, because it's not about whether you get the goal or not. Because even though I'm obviously, that was my dream. So to say I'm not like upset about how things worked out and just it would be a lie. But the thing is that when you set a goal like that, chasing after it with all this like dedication and all
Yeah.
the passion I had towards it, it changes who you are as a person, because you have to grow into the kind of person who can achieve that goal if you're working
Yeah.
so hard for it. So the whole process was a great learning experience, and so many lessons like I can carry into my life and things like
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Just
can we back up on that a little bit?
yeah,
Because
absolutely,
I want to talk about some of that because
for sure.
one of the big things that what I talk about on these shows is an athlete's mental toughness.
Yep.
And everybody thinks, oh, you guys are so tough. You're so tough. We're not always that tough,
Yeah.
up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you made the team. Talk about the exhilaration of that feeling when they say, hey, that first time you tried out as a walk on and they say, you're on. Yeah. Talk about that. How'd you feel? What was the emotion like? And then, let's fast forward to the point. Okay, I got to go to this again. I mean, I got to try out again. I got to get myself mentally ready again.
Yep.
And then you go through that, and then you find out you hit, for lack of better words, you hit a brick wall, and
Yeah.
you get kind of stopped, and you're
Yep.
like, wait a minute, but you got to keep plugging. So can you kind of talk about that journey itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So after I made the team, I remember the exact night. I mean, I remember every detail. It was one of the greatest moments of my life for sure. I mean, I'm young, so hopefully I'll have a lot more of those
Yeah,
moments that
you got a
eventually
long way to go.
peak over that. Exactly. But to the life I've lived so far, that was one of the greatest moments. I mean, it was just so much like it was years and years of hard work and just like persistence and feeling like I never had my opportunity, never had my shot. And just in one moment, it was like granted to me. I remember I was in the business school, like an hour away from taking a test, and I get the call, and it was a number who I didn't know. I thought it was like a scam call, but for some reason I was like, all right, I'm going to pick this up. So I take it. It's like, hey, Weston, this is coach from the Buffs. Like, we're calling you about walk-on tryouts. I was like, oh my gosh. I step out, my heart's like in my stomach. And then he's like, yeah, we really liked how you performed. We think you could really help us out. Like, we'd like for you to come in tomorrow or something to get a tour of the facilities and to meet some of the coaches. I was like, I felt like my head was like exploding. It
Yeah.
was just the emotions. I can't even put it into words. So I call my mom, I call my dad, I call like my old trainer, I call my friends, and I was like crying. It was just,
Yeah,
it was like my whole life felt like it built up to that moment. And so it
right.
was amazing.
It
And then,
did.
yeah, exactly. It really did in a lot of ways, because football was always my main thing. And so that was a huge emotional buildup. And then, I mean, I was riding that high for like the next 2 months, because that was in late October or mid October.
Mhm.
So, I mean, through December, winter break, I was working out over winter break. I was so excited. And I was just, yeah, the emotions were unreal. Unreal is the only way I could describe it. I've never felt emotions that strong. And then coming back and going into the facility and being told that I have to try out again, even though logically, like, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. Like, there's nothing wrong with how that went down. It just, for me, having that high and then having feel like I was there and then not being there, I was in a low for like, I remember I sat outside and I called my mom on the bench outside of the facilities, and I talked to my mom for like an hour or two. I was really down in the dumps. And then I kind of like was sad for a couple hours. Then my whole mind changed. I was like, okay, now I have to focus back in. Like, this is basically my mindset on it was, all right, this is going to make it an even better story in the future. I was like, it's another roadblock that I got to get over. And so
Yep.
it gave even more motivation. And I thought that before my sophomore tryout, I thought that was like the most motivation I could feel, because I was coming off my freshman year of not getting an opportunity, coming off a high school career of not feeling like I really got a chance or could prove the kind of player I was in years and years of hard work. So I was just that before my sophomore tryout, I thought that was the peak of my motivation. And then this scenario, it was even more motivation. And then I'd left this part out, but I broke my ankle. I was playing basketball at the rec center, kind of stupid, but I broke my ankle. And so then I'm sedentary for like 2 months, recovering that. And I remember at the time I watched the Creed movie, like the boxing movie.
Yep. Yep.
So I downloaded the Creed soundtrack, and I would just listen to the Creed soundtrack like every day while I was working out. And
That's good.
my motivation, emotions at the time. Like I was just so, yeah, motivated, focused, confident, all the above. And I've never felt that level of like an intensity of an emotion before in that way. And so I think having that experience was super important for me because that's something now, like, because I've felt that level of like dedication and passion. I think I can draw into that for anything that I do now because I've experienced it. But it was such a unique, like, because I was so high and
Yeah.
to the low, and then to build back up having another
Yeah.
opportunity. It was such a roller coaster of emotions, like in a really developmental way for myself. So it was a good experience, but I think those emotions were definitely like way more intense than I've ever experienced.
I can only imagine. Now,
Yeah.
how when you were down in that valley, for lack of better words, right? You know, you said you were in a tough spot for a couple hours. Like, how did you flip the switch and say, "Look, man, all right, it's no more feeling sorry for myself. It's go time now." Like, how did
Yeah.
you do that?
Yeah. I think the biggest part of it for me, honestly, and this was kind of like a theme through the whole process, was it wasn't really like a choice or something to think about. It was just because I loved it so much, like I knew what the right move was. You know, when I was in high school, I wasn't playing, or like when I didn't make the team freshman year, it was always like there was never a question of what do I do. It was always I knew how much I loved the game, so I was sad about it. And then once that initial emotional wave like passed over, it was just clear to me like how much I was obsessed with it. I can't stop. Even if I wanted to try to make myself stop, like if I could try to convince myself to not try out as much as I wanted to, but I was just itching to get back to it. And I was like, okay. And there's something about, even though it was disappointing, there's something about like another challenge that's kind of enticing. I was like, okay, this situation is a little bit trickier now, but this could make it a better story if this works out. So that kind of challenge was very enticing for me. And also, I'll say my mom was super helpful. My parents have been super supportive through the whole process. So I remember I called her and she was really supportive and just kind of like sad with me, and then was very encouraging. Was like, okay, well, you know what you need to do now. Like if you want to go back to it, you know what this is gonna, like you can do it. We believe in you, and you know the kind of work this is gonna take, and you've done it before. So, and then that just flipped my mind. And I was like, okay, this is, I knew how much I loved it. So the only thing I could do then was just work and prepare again for the next tryout.
No, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to ask this question, but you've already told me. But if you outside of making the team as that walk on,
Mhm.
you know, what do you think's your most memorable athletic moment?
That's a good question. Honestly, my most memorable athletic moment outside of that is going to be a bad moment. But it was so memorable because it like sparked so much growth for me. And it was my junior year of high school. And this was in that, it was like a period at the beginning of the season where I was kind of in the competition for the QB job. It was like a weird situation. And it was the end of our homecoming game. And the starter, I think he got hit really hard and got hurt, or maybe he got pulled out of the game. I forget exactly what happened, but we were down by a touchdown or 10 points. And I had played really well in like scrimmages before the season. And in our first game, it was a blowout. So I got in and I like ran for a touchdown and had some big passes and stuff. So I was really confident at this time. And I came off a big off season. So I was feeling really good about my game. And so I get in this homecoming game and I basically like just cannot get the offense moving. I think I threw maybe 7 passes and only one of them was a completion, like just could not do anything. And so for some reason, that just completely got in my head. Like I can't explain what exactly happened, but it destroyed my confidence. And for the rest of the season, like that season, I couldn't even throw the ball right in practice. Like if you talk about the yips in baseball, like that's something people will talk about. I had that like as bad as it could get, I think. I was just literally a different player from the game before that, from the day before that game, and then like the next practice after it. And I still don't know exactly what happened there. But the reason why it's so memorable for me is because that's what led me to really start learning about like mindset and all these things. And I had to go through this whole journey of like trying to work through that. And it's still that kind of stuff, like the stuff that kind of illuminated after that game, like the emotions, the doubt, and all these things carried with me for a bit after that. And I really had to work through it. And that was such like a transformative process, not even for me as a player, but for me as a person. And so even though that was like a tough moment and bad at the time, I look back on it very fondly because I learned so much from it. And it sparked like my whole obsession with trying to learn how to mentally perform better as an athlete, because so many athletes are talented, but they get in their own head. And I
Yeah.
experienced that so
Oh my God.
intensely that it was such a growth experience for me. So that would be my most memorable.
That's awesome. So how did you carry that? That mental fortitude, from you went from high school, you took your knocks, you kept fighting, scratching, clawing. Now you're like, I'm not just going to go to like Division 3 football. I'm not just going to go to Division 2 football. I'm not going to go to Division 1 AA. I'm going to go to big time college football and take your talents there. So we'll talk about that transition from high school to the mental toughness you need to go to play at that level. Like how did you handle that?
Yeah, that was definitely, it was obviously a very big stepping stone. And I think the thing for me was like, I've always been very much like I have very strong self-belief. And I think that's been instilled in me from my parents, which has been, I'm really grateful for that. Like they've always encouraged me with that kind of thing and never ever try to put a damper on like my dreams. Anything I wanted to do, they always were behind me with that and said they thought I could do it. And so I think you have to have that initial belief and the courage to make that jump. Because I was willing going into it. I was like, okay, there's a real possibility that I don't get the result I want doing this. And I was obviously I knew it would be painful, but I was okay going after that risk. But I also had the self-belief that I could make it happen. And I knew that in high school, I wasn't a Division 1 quarterback. I didn't start a game. So there's like me saying that to myself would be a complete lie. But I believe through my work and through my work ethic and through my persistence, I was like, I can make myself into a Division 1 caliber quarterback. And at the workouts, and I also had a little bit of like, proof, which obviously I'm a little biased because I'm looking at my own game, but I would go to workouts and there would be other quarterbacks there who were Division 1 commits, highly rated guys. And I'd work out with them and I would like, I could throw with these guys. And given a couple of those moments, I'd have some big moments where I'd work out with the guy for an hour and I'm like, I'm right there with him. Like what we're doing. I'm as accurate as my arm might be a little bit weaker. Maybe he's a little taller than me. There's a couple areas where he might edge me out, but like I can close those gaps. So that was kind of where I got that mentality. And then I was still a little nervous about it, but I was nervous, but I didn't doubt it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I was nervous because it meant so much to me, but I was very confident about it. And it was kind of that combination of the self-belief and also getting those little like nuggets of proof through a little workout, like training with a guy and having a day where like, or having a coach say something to me like, yeah, I think you can do it, man. Like you're looking really good. You have the arm, whatever it may be. So those in combination definitely gave me kind of like the mental fortitude to go for it.
Well, you kind of just gave the answer to my next question is like outside of your parents, it's like who helped you believe in yourself? Like what are the coaches? Hey, Weston, you can throw that ball. Hey, Weston, you can stay in line with these guys. Hey, you're just as good as these guys. Who else was involved with helping inspire you to believe that you can do what you wanted to do?
For sure. Yeah. My whole family was huge, as I mentioned. And then outside of them, there were a couple trainers that I worked with. One being, it's called Jenkins Elite. It's a quarterback training company. And they started in Colorado, but the guy who runs it, Tim Jenkins, he played for the Broncos for a bit. And then now they have a bunch of locations. But Tim, and there was another quarterback trainer there named Justin Holland, who played for CSU back when he was in college. So them two, and then these other speed trainers I worked with. Now one of them who I'm working for this summer, actually at his gym, named Patrick Nolan. He runs a gym called Pivotal Sports Performance in Denver. And then another trainer, his name is Taylor Sheridan. He worked for a gym called Elite Speed Sports Performance. And all of them were huge because when I'm in high school and I'm working with these guys, they're so knowledgeable. They have playing experience, so much knowledge of like the field. They've worked with other athletes. So I view their opinion as super credible. And I remember there's just like little things they would say to me that would just really give me a lot of confidence. And I think about that now that I'm going into, I worked as a personal trainer last year in Boulder. And then this summer I'm working at a gym. And so I remember that, like how those little things you hear from a coach can be so empowering and so confidence boosting. And I remember like Coach Jenkins, I remember he was super excited for me when I got the preferred walk on to the Division 1 FCS school. And I remember, I think the way he reacted when I told him was funny. I think he probably thought I was like just making the wrong choice going to a bigger school to walk on. He's like, why would you do that? You have an opportunity here, which is totally fair. But as I explained earlier, there was a lot more that went into that decision than just like the football of it. So, but I remember he when I got the opportunity, he's like, man, he's like, you're gonna kill it, dude. He's like, you've been throwing so well, like you're gonna go there. He's like, you could contribute as a freshman. And when he said that to me, I was like, whoa. I believe that about myself, but hearing that from someone who's credible, like it really means a lot. And all those guys would give me those little nuggets. And it feels when it's coming from a credible source, one, and two, you can tell they're not just like blowing off steam to every athlete they work with. They're actually giving you like truthful feedback. It's really meaningful and really like boosting for your confidence and belief.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're in college now, right? So
Yep.
yeah, how does being a college athlete, how does that contribute to your personal growth? You know, you both on and off the field, because it's so, sometimes our ego gets in the way a little bit. Hey, I'm a college athlete, right? But then it's like, hey, there's things I got to do that the average student doesn't understand, that what you have to do to stay ready
Yep.
or to get ready, because you never know when it's going to be your turn, next guy up, right? So talk about your personal growth, your maturity. Once you got to college, you got the walk on acceptance. You felt you're on the team. Now you're growing. Talk about that journey.
Yeah. That was a huge journey. And I think mine was pretty unique with that because I viewed myself as a college athlete from the day I stepped on campus, but I was never even technically a college athlete because I never was officially on the team and got cleared. So that was a very unique experience for me. And I remember particularly like transformative moment in that way was I remember it was my freshman year. It was the first game, the football game, and I was in the stands as a student. Obviously, I've gone to like all the football games as a student. And I remember that game, like sitting in the stands, and I remember seeing the students like, and people at the game, they're having a good time, whatever, they're yelling stuff at the players. And I remember hearing the stuff they were saying, and they're like trying to say they know what's going on and like give advice. And it was really illuminating me. It was like, okay, these students here have actually no idea what they're talking about when it comes to football. And the reason I say that, and that was a big moment for me, is because for a while, like I was worried about others' opinions and I didn't want people to think I was like some crazy dude for like trying to come to school and walk on. I didn't want people to think I was kind of a fraud, like just some guy who's like, oh yeah, I'm trying to walk on just to like try to seem cool or something. Because I
Right.
remember there were a couple of people I talked to freshman year. I was like, oh, I'm trying to walk on. And they're like, really? Like it's a Division I team, you know that? Like, are you good enough? And they kind of gave me like questions like that. And I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't be trying to do that if I didn't think so. And so seeing that, I was like, okay, like this is really a self-driven thing. And that kind of freed me from others' opinions in a way and worrying about that. And so it was interesting because it had to be completely self-driven because I wasn't on the team at any point. I was never going to workouts that were scheduled. Like everything I did was on my own time and of my own structure. So it forced me to, one, learn about training and how to set all that up. And two, I had to have the discipline and the time management and all the above. And like, connecting with friends and different guys who were also trying to walk on so we could train together. And so I think it was a unique combination of kind of trying to make myself a college athlete and trying to live that lifestyle while not actually being one and balancing that with like a normal student academic schedule, still going to the football games, viewing it from the stands, but feeling like a player, if that makes
Yep.
sense. It was an
Yeah.
interesting kind of dichotomy.
So what motivates you to keep pushing, keep trying? Because I mean, you could drop down Division III and play tomorrow. What motivated you to keep pushing at this level? Hey, listen, I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up, even though they keep pushing me back and putting a roadblock in front of me, jumping over hurdles. What motivates you to keep getting up in the morning and keep pushing?
Yeah, I think one, it just came from my initial commitment, like when I was going to CU, is my initial thought. I was like, I'm making this happen. Like I committed that to myself. And there was no plan B. There was no exit plan. I was not thinking about, like, I was going to CU to get my degree and it didn't work out. And I'm finishing that out now. Like I set out to that and that's what I'm doing. And so from the beginning, that was my mindset. And so it wasn't too much of a question. Like when it didn't work out, I could have been like, okay, I'm going to finish school here. So let me just be a student. But like I said earlier, it was just that obsession and the love for the game. And just like, there's something about a challenge like that is really enticing for me. And it's like having a challenge like that to work towards is super, I think, enjoyable and it makes you grow as a person. And this is, I'm sure, something we'll get into later as well. But that's also what's challenging about transitioning out. Like last summer, when I didn't hear back from the team and I was basically now like, okay, I'm just a student. Now I have to figure out what my identity is outside of football and all these things. It's weird to adjust to that. And I'm kind of looking for that new thing in my life to fill that gap a little bit, which is a struggle transitioning out. And so the reason I bring that up is just because that was always what it was for me. It was like it was never a doubt. It was never a question. It was like, football is my thing. I went to see you to do this. And so even my emotions could be up, my emotions could be down. Like, I could be sad, I could be frustrated. Those things are okay. There were times where I questioned whether I wanted to continue doing it. There was a period last semester for about a week where I thought about transferring and going to play it somewhere else. There were those times that happened, but throughout it all, the love of the game stayed, and I knew that I wanted to stick with it. And
Yeah.
I just had to have no matter how the emotions were, I just had to have the strength and the discipline to continue with the path I was doing, because it was what I love to do. And so it was easy in a way. It was hard, but it was easy.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that if you don't mind. Let's break that down.
Yeah.
You said the word identity, right? And when I was playing a million years ago, right, and playing football, and the school was big enough where there was 15,000 kids roughly, so it's not huge, but it's not small. So you can get lost if you tried.
Yeah.
But as an athlete, the real big guys, you can't lose them. They stand out in them. But the average height guys, the 5'10" to 6-footers, unless they put athletic gear on,
Yep.
the identity of an athlete only lives up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you have the gear on, the whole world identifies you as the athlete.
Yeah.
So talk about athletics, your personal and your athletic identity. How do you handle that when you were playing? And now if you choose to, hey, listen, I'm not playing anymore. Well, how does that affect or change your identity, the way you look at yourself?
Yeah, that's been a huge point of like thought for me. And because it was always, that was my identity. Like, I was Weston, the quarterback. Like, that's how I viewed myself. That was just always my thing. And so I was always just so obsessed with it. And so I go to college, and even though I'm a student, that's kind of how I viewed myself still. And even when I didn't make the team my freshman year, I still viewed myself that way. And I think the importance was, I kind of realized how damaging that could be my junior year, going back to that memorable moment I brought up, because when that game didn't go my way, I felt just terrible as a person. And I realized at that time, football cannot be my identity, because then if football is going wrong, then my identity feels wrong. And so there needs to be some level of separation there. And going to college, I'm involved in some really great programs at CU. Been lucky to meet great people, make great friends, and get involved with some great things around campus. So I think that was important, and like having some other passions and community there that was like, I'm here not because of me as an athlete, but because of me as a person. I would get into these, programs to be a part of them, and they didn't really care about whether or not I walked on the team. It was just who I am as a person, academics, things of that nature, which is good because it gives you strong identity outside of sports. But I still had it internally. And as you're saying, someone externally, they only see that on you if you have the gear. And so no one really saw that on me because I didn't have the gear. So I was just a student to everyone. Inside is where that identity was. And so then last summer, at the beginning, when I tried out under the new coaching staff and I didn't make it, that summer, like, there was a period of, I would say 2 months, June and July, I was just really kind of confused. I wouldn't say I was, still I was having a good summer. I was doing things I enjoyed, but I was just in kind of like a daze, like a little bit of a fog. Just a little bit confused about what I wanted. And that still comes a little bit like in the present moment. I still think about these things and still struggle with it every once in a while. Probably more frequently than that, to be honest with you, because it was so with me for so long. But it's important. And I was in that daze. And then I kind of realized, like, okay, I have to, whether or not I play football in my future at all again, regardless of that, I need to establish now my identity as Weston. And like, for so long, I've tried to portray myself and be the quarterback because that's who I wanted to be. But now, because that's not who I am currently, whether or not that's in the future is irrelevant. I have to be Weston the person. And I'm lucky I have a lot of great people around me who see me as Weston the person, not Weston the football player, because that can be challenging in another aspect. If you're on the team your whole life, you're the star your whole life, and no one sees you as anything but the star. For me, it was kind of the opposite. No one saw me as anyone. I was the only one who saw myself as a quarterback.
Right.
No, my parents saw me as that. Like, my high school friends saw me as that, but no one at college did. They just saw me as some kid trying to walk on who was a student.
Right.
So it was challenging transitioning out of it. And I'm still working through that, but it's important to have, I think, passions and a strong community and places where you feel like you're valued as a person outside of what you can bring athletically, which I was really lucky I had a lot of those.
That's awesome. So You're a young man. You're going to be 21 in a couple of months, right? Probably shouldn't give your age away, but you're a young guy, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Um, you got the high school kids. High school kids are hearing your story right now. Right? Well, maybe not right this second, but they will.
Yeah.
And there's kids out there right now that are thinking, D1, 2, 3, where am I going to play? Where should I give it a shot? I'm dreaming about D1. Do I give up on my dream, to play lower level, just in case? What kind of advice can you give the young guys or girls in other sports who've been dreaming about D1 sports their entire career, high school wise, and now it's time to make that decision? Do I
Yep,
put it all out there? No one's giving me a scholarship. Do I put it all out there to give it my best effort, or do I settle for less just so I can play?
for sure. Yeah, I think very situationally dependent, obviously. And I think the best advice I could give is you should look at the school first. Because I think for me, that was the huge part. I knew CU was the right school. And going there, I've made my best friends. I have so much good going on at that school. I've enjoyed my time there so much, working out and also doing amazing things at the school, being involved with the community. So that's kind of what the logic was for me there. And so I think if an athlete's looking and they are looking at the D1, like that's their dream, and then they have another great opportunity, and it's kind of hard. It's a little bit muddled, the decision. I would just look at the schools. What's a better fit for you? Because as we just talked about, there's a lot more to your identity than an athlete, and that could leave at any second. This was something my dad told me too, which I think I didn't really understand at the time, but I'm starting to understand now. When I was going through the process, he would say to me, if you go to a school just to play football, it's like, what happens if you get hurt? You're going to be hurt. You're out. Maybe they take away your spot. You never know what's going to happen. And then you're at the school. What are you doing there? What are you enjoying about the area, about the people, about what you're studying, etc. So that'd be my first piece of advice. Look at the school. And then I just think it really comes down to like, what do you value? If a young athlete is like, football or whatever their sport may be is everything, and they have to, I think today with the transfer portal, luckily you can go to a smaller school, and if you really perform well, you can get another opportunity. For me, and I get a lot of comments on my videos like this, they'll say like, oh, you should have gone to a smaller school and work your way up. And I'm like, yeah, logically that makes sense, but in my heart that wasn't the right decision. And logic can never like overpower your intuition with that. And even though it didn't work out, it was much so the right decision for me to make, because I grew so much from it, even though it didn't work out on paper. And so my advice in that aspect would be, if a young athlete is looking and they have this dream school and they're willing to like put it on the line like that, and they're okay with going into a situation that logically is not the best decision. Like if their goal is to have the most flourishing, successful college career that they want to have, they should go where they can have an opportunity to guarantee be on the team. But if they're looking to really like take the risk and they're okay with that risk and they want to take the shot like that, then they could do what I chose to do, which is beneficial in some ways, also not beneficial in other ways, because now I'm about to be a senior and I've had no college experience playing at all. And so if I decide to want to play a grad year or something like that, that'll be a very different situation than if I had gone to a smaller school and played 4 years. But luckily it's worked out great for me because, like I said, I love the school and I was okay with the risk that I was taking, and I put my all into it. So I grew a lot from it. Like if a young athlete decides to do that, they need to be fully committed to it and be willing to go all out on it. But also if it doesn't work out, being able to still kind of ride behind that decision and know like, okay, this is what I stuck to, and I'm going to stay at the school, unless they have a good backup plan. I'm going to go here, try to walk on, and then I have this plan. But that wasn't the case for me. So that was kind of a lot of jumbled ideas, but that would be my general advice.
And it makes a lot of sense, because what would happen, Weston, if you didn't pursue that, you would have spent the rest of your life wondering, what if?
Yeah.
What if I gave that a shot? What if I tried? Because you in your mind, your mind and your heart and your emotion, you believe that you're good enough to play, which means you deserve to give yourself that shot.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't, trust me, you'll be 55 years old one day still saying, man, I wonder what would have happened.
That is a great point. That is such a great point. And that's a good way to think about decisions. And I've thought about that before too. And still it's emotionally like I think about football every day, and it still is a thing I'm working through. Like emotionally, it's tough. This is my dream, and it didn't work out how I wanted. But I will live the rest of my life knowing that I did it and I put my heart on the line for it. And it didn't work out. But as you said, if I would have gone another way, like quote unquote safer route, or made a more logical decision, there would have always been the what if. And that is a question you can never answer, unfortunately.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
question, though it's painful, I answered it and I grew a lot through the process.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
that's my next question now, talking about pain, right? Painful. I don't mean physical pain, but mental pain. You know, there's a lot of mental challenges that college athletes go through. There's anxiety, right? There's just stress, there's depression, there's all kinds of stuff, you know. And what can, did you deal with any of that? If so, how? If you're open to talking about it, and then what kind of advice can you give for the next generation coming up, how to navigate through all those mental stresses and challenges?
Yeah, 100%. I've definitely dealt with some of that. I would say my junior year of high school, I dealt with a lot of just anxiety, nervousness, fear. Like when I would step onto the field, I would just get nervous and start to completely just flip out. And then after last year, what happened, I was kind of dealing with some, just like I said, I kind of felt in the fog for a while. I didn't really know what to do. And my best advice for that would, with the anxiety, the nervousness, the stress, whatever strong emotions there are, I got into meditation and it was super helpful for me.
Mm,
And I think the crucial part for me with that was just being okay with feeling that way and letting that emotion, like feeling it fully. When I would go into the field and I'd be really nervous and I would try to push it down and act cool and not be nervous and try to convince myself that I was okay and not feeling anything, that's when it gets really bad. But when I would fully accept, like, okay, yeah, I'm really nervous right now, and kind of just relax into that feeling, you almost like go into the nervousness and it's like easier to handle. So that would be a big piece of advice for that, is just like, it's okay to feel those strong emotions. Let yourself feel them. And I think meditation can be a really good way to do that. Like I would just relax and kind of these emotions would bubble up to the surface and I could just kind of sit there. It'd be uncomfortable, but I'd let them flow. And then after 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it may be, I would feel a lot kind of like lighter afterwards. And then with after I didn't make it and I was just kind of in this weird fog, I just, the key thing, and my dad was really helpful with this too, is that I just had to keep taking steps forward. Like if I were to just lay there in my house and do nothing all day, just thinking about the situation, there's nothing productive going to come from that, because it's going to be painful regardless. It's best if I start to take some action in some other areas. Like, all right, let me go try to find a job I'm passionate about. Let me get involved with this, involved with this. And I'm still feeling the same emotions and I'm letting myself feel them. But at least now I'm stirring up different areas of my life, trying new things, finding new things I'm passionate about, like all the above. And that's a good way to kind of like get some new strongholds of my identity, which I was lucky I did. And I've been building those up now for like the past year and I'm continuing to do so. So that would be my advice for the emotions and also working through the identity part of it.
right. So can we touch on the meditation a little bit?
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
you know, some people don't understand, like, what is meditation? Do you just sit there and think? Like, can you describe, what meditation's like for you, and
Mhm.
and really, what are the top benefits you get from it?
Yeah. So I started meditating my junior year. And basically what it is for me is I just sit down and I close my eyes and I just relax my whole body as much as I can. And then I'm just completely focused on my breath. And whenever my mind goes off and thinks about something else, I just try to notice that I'm thinking about something else and bring it back to the breath. And what happens is my mind will think about something else. And then I'll get so stirred up in that thought that I won't realize I'm thinking until like a minute later. And I'll remember, oh, I'm meditating right now. Let me bring myself back. And then you get a little bit better at it. And so eventually it really started, or originally, it really started out as just that kind of like training my focus. And I noticed the biggest immediate impact was it really helped me become more aware of my thoughts. And so I would be on the bench or in practice, and I would now be able to pinpoint, like I would have these negative thoughts come up, this like negative self-talk, whatever it might be. And I could start to pinpoint that really quickly. And that was the first benefit I noticed. Then my focus started to get a lot better. And that was what it was initially for me, was training my focus and learning how to be more aware of my thoughts and just kind of observe non-judgmentally how I'm thinking and become more aware of that. And then as I kept doing it, now I would say it's honestly more of a, still and unfortunately with social media and stuff, my focus is still not very good. That's like a common age issue, I think, with a lot of the younger generation, is we just can't focus because we're always scrolling Instagram reels and TikTok and stuff, shortening the attention span. So it still is very challenging to that degree. But as I've gotten into it more, now it's very much an emotional thing for me. And so that's kind of my time. Like when I sit down and I close my eyes and I relax, like a lot of strong emotions will come up during that period because I'm relaxed and I'm kind of like letting those things come to the surface. And that's the time for me to just sit there and like process them and be with those emotions. And I don't always know like necessarily what the emotion is related to. Sometimes it's obvious, like an emotion will come up and kind of a thought will flash in my mind, like, okay, this emotion is definitely related to this situation or that situation. But a lot of the time, I'm not really sure, and it doesn't really matter. It's more just about processing it and letting yourself feel it. Because if you keep those things shoved down, that's when it starts to really build up. And so that's what it is for me now, is kind of like a calming, relaxing, training my focus
Yeah.
and myself process emotions.
So with regards to your social media, you're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Do you have, and I've seen a lot of your stuff, like I said before, it's excellent. I recommend everybody goes and watches all the Weston stuff. You're going to get a lot, especially if you're an up and coming athlete. This is great stuff. But I don't think I've seen anything in there around meditation.
Yeah, I've made a couple, but I should definitely make more. Um, yeah, I haven't done, I've probably done maybe 3 videos on it, and I've
Okay.
made close to 200 videos. So
That's why I missed it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I should definitely, that is an important topic because it was so transformative for me. It's
Yeah.
definitely something I should make some more videos on in the future.
Because my next question, I keep sticking around athletic identity because it's just so strong,
Yep.
because people have heard me say this a million times, I'm sure you've heard this, is that athletes die twice.
Yeah.
They die when their sport's over. For the last day, they take the helmet off, whatever they stop doing. They take the sneakers off, the skates off for the last time. That's the first time that identity is dead. It's gone. It's over. Now
Yep.
it's just memories, right? But then obviously in real life, we died later on in life. Hopefully it's way far down the road.
Mhm.
But can you talk about, you know, athletic identity, and mental well-being, and how can the young guys, girls, because you've gone through some major ups and downs, right? And you've come out, it's obvious you've come out on top mentally and stronger and better and everything, right? How can these younger people prepare for that, knowing that it's coming? It's everybody hits it. It
Yeah.
doesn't discriminate, right? It's just sooner or later in your athletic career, you're going to get hit with some sort of mental stress.
Yep.
So what kind of advice can you give to the younger generations? And like you're not young, right? But coming up into the college athletic world, to how to handle that identity, and how to make sure that your mental well-being stays strong even when things don't go right.
For sure. The most important thing for me was every single challenge or valley. The most effective way I think an athlete can look at it is looking at it as, this is a necessary thing for me to go to that's going to forge and strengthen who I am and make me the kind of person that's going to allow me to achieve the goals and the whatever dreams I have in the future. And so that's always how I viewed things. Is every obstacle is like, okay, this is not, and being an athlete is not who you are. It's something you do. And you could be really good at it, but it's something you do. It's not who you are. You're a person first, athlete second. So you could be a amazing person, a really talented athlete, but if you have a bad game, that doesn't mean you're a bad person, right? So that was important for me to wrap my head around. And for me, looking at these obstacles, when you're going through these obstacles as an athlete, you're not a bad person because you're going through them. I think that's the key thing young athletes need to understand. It's not a reflection of their character. It's a reflection of their athletic situation, which is a small microcosm of their life. And unfortunately, as a young athlete, that feels like everything. Your entire life feels like that. But you could take a step back and realize it's just a small part. And the mindset that I would recommend any young athlete to take is to look at that. And even though it feels like life or death, and it's felt like that for me since I was 8 years old, looking at that and realizing, okay, even though this feels like everything and it's really challenging, this is an experience that is going to forge me into the person that I'm going to become one day. And that's a continual process all throughout life. But these are necessary trials that I'm going to look back on fondly because they're going to inspire so much growth and transformation in who I am. Like, even though I've gone through challenging things in my athletic career and I look back on some of them and still feel emotions about them and whatever, I look back on all of it somewhat fondly, even the most painful experiences, because it made me who I am. And without it, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I still have a lot of long ways to go, as does everyone. And everyone's always a constant work in progress in that way. But I would say that's the best way to look at it, is that it's not a challenge or a reflection of you as a person. It's an opportunity, and it's a necessary trial that's going to build you and make you stronger and make you smarter, give you lessons that you're going to learn and build you into the person that you're going to become one day, whether that transfers to athletics or just life in general.
What are you majoring in again?
Business.
You got to change that. I mean, you got to change it to some sort of psych, some sort of, I mean, the wisdom that comes out of your young mouth is incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I mean, it's your parents, have done, it sounds like they've done a tremendous job with you.
Yeah, I'm very lucky.
And whatever coaches you've had growing up have also instilled some pretty cool values and structure into your mind, your strength of your mind, which is really cool.
Absolutely.
Which leads into my next question. Burnout. I talk to so many athletes who are, I don't mean physically burned out, because sometimes we can get physically completely overwhelmed and drained. But mental burnout, like in all these trials and tribulations that you've gone through athletically, which affects us mentally, have you ever gotten to the point where, hey man, enough is enough? I'm just like burnt out.
Definitely. I would say the biggest point of that for me was my freshman year of college. And there was a period of time, it was after I didn't make the team my freshman year, and I was working out with some friends. And I remember saying to them, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, guys. Like, I'm not sure. I don't know if I like it anymore. And so then I took some time off of playing and I focused on other things. And then I came back that a couple months later to practicing again, and kind of the love reignited for me. And I think the burnout, it can come from putting pressure on yourself and just kind of like almost just spinning the tires while the car is in park. It's like you have a situation that's not going to improve. For me, I just not made the team, not gotten an opportunity. And I was like upset about it. And my way to deal with that was just to like go work out immediately, which doesn't really do anything in that instance. You could do that productively, of course. But for me in that situation, it was just kind of like a cope. I just wanted to go work out to make myself feel better. And that way I was just kind of like not really working out for the reason of enjoying the game and wanting the process of getting better, but just to work out to like make myself feel better about the sadness. And so I think when I took some time off and established some other things I really liked in my life, hung out with friends, did some other good things, that was a good way to kind of like reestablish my identity as a person. And then when you're whole as a person, you can approach athletics with so much more love and enjoyment and obsession over what you're doing in a healthy manner, versus when that's all you do. And when it goes bad, you just have to keep banging your head against the wall to try to figure it out. You're eventually going to crash and burn. It's unsustainable. So you need to have those other strongholds and those other things that you're doing that reinforce your personal identity in order to keep yourself kind of like, you can't pour from an empty cup. That's a saying that a lot of people say.
Yeah.
Very true. So
that's incredible stuff. So you mentioned before you broke your ankle.
Yep.
And that was your sophomore year?
Yeah. Sophomore spring.
Okay. Athletic injuries. And now an ankle is pretty tough. From what I hear, never had it happen to me, but from what I hear, an ankle is probably one of the most painful things to break.
Yep.
Okay. But talk about, you're pushing. Your goal is you want to try out, you want to make the team. Boom, you break your ankle doing something goofy. Like we all do pickup sports, so everybody did it, even though you weren't supposed to. And talk about what you're thinking, what's going through your head. We're like, oh my God, like I just broke my ankle. Am I done? Is my future done? Like, do I have another shot at this? Like, what was going through your head?
Yeah. It was funny because originally when it happened, I was like in denial. I was like, oh, it's just a sprain. I'm fine. Like the day after, I was doing calf raises in my room. I was like, all right, I got to start re-strengthening it now. And then I think my mom convinced me to go to urgent care. And I went and they x-rayed it. They're like, yeah, you potentially might need surgery. And I was like, oh gosh, like this is real. And then they were like, you should not be putting any weight on it. I was like, oh, well, like 12 hours ago, I was doing calf raises in my room. And so at that point, I had this was in the gray period between when I walked on the team, the coaching staff changed, and I had the new tryouts. So I had no idea when tryouts were going to be. I just knew this was in February. So I knew tryouts were probably going to be in April, May, June, something like that. So I was initially pretty nervous. I just didn't know the timeline, when it was going to heal, if I was going to be ready. And then that quickly turned to like motivation. I was all right, I got to rehab this. And so I was eating healthy, trying to sleep a lot, do all the things I could to improve my recovery. And coming out of it, when I started to like run again, and I knew particularly like at a walk-on trial, it's very important that you have some good athleticism, because that's kind of what you're showcasing at a lot of the drills. And so I knew like, okay, if I want a chance, I have to perform well on the 40-yard dash, the agility drills, all that stuff. And I get out of my boot and I start to run again. And I just like, I can't put weight on my foot. Like, I feel like I have a dead leg when I'm running. It feels like I'm just staggered almost. And so that was mentally tough. Like, I had to rebuild my running back up and start from jogging, getting on like a treadmill, holding myself up to kind of de-weight myself a little bit. And it was just staying focused one day at a time was the big thing. Like, all right, what do I have to get done today? All right, I'm gonna do this jog. I'm gonna do these rehab exercises. Okay. I come back the next day and it's like, I'm not looking at the end goal and how far I am from where I need to be, because I'm a long way from being ready, but I made a little progress from yesterday. And that's all I could focus on was those day-to-day steps. And then I looked up 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, and I was able to sprint again. And I was actually running fast again, doing good times and stuff. And so then I'm like, okay, this worked. But day to day, if you're looking at the big picture, it's so mentally challenging. And for a bigger injury, like an ACL tear or something, I can only imagine. And mine was only 3 months. So I think it's really that day-to-day process of making those small incremental improvements.
I mean, 3 months is a long time,
Yeah.
to be rehabbing stuff, but you're right. It's the guys with ACLs and stuff, they're out 12 months, maybe more sometimes,
Yep.
and it's crazy. I'm interviewing a young man next week who was out 2 years from a knee injury.
Wow.
2 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Serious.
So from your perspective, you've been around college athletics for a while now, right? What do you see in today's world? Because I can go backwards in time 40 years ago and talk about stresses that we faced.
Yep.
But they were kind of covered up. Nobody talked about it. It's okay. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. But looking in today's world, the stuff that you see, what kind of stresses do the college athletes face today? What do you see that's out there that's prevalent? Man, I see this guy, he's dealing with that, or she's dealing with that. Like, what do you see that's prevalent out there?
I think the biggest thing that comes to mind that I see is the social media and just the amount of reach that these athletes have, and how they're so accessible for like negative feedback. And it just further exacerbates the identity issue, because now these athletes, they have a great game or they have a bad game, and social media's reaction is completely judging off how they played. It does not care about them as a person. It does not care about how they treat other people. It is all about their performance on the field. If it was bad, everyone hates them. If it was good, everyone loves them. And so that is such a tough environment to be in. I was never like a starter on a team or in a scenario where I was really having like a large amount of hate or negativity or even love like that, because the love in that aspect is fake, if we're honest, because they're not going to be with you when you're playing poorly. Yeah. And I saw that, as I mentioned earlier, being in the stands as a freshman. That was my kind of clarity moment. Like, okay, if I make this team and I like am playing, I am not going to care at all what these people think, because if I'm doing bad, they're going to be hating me. And if I'm doing good, they're going to love me. And so it goes either ways, because when they're loving you, it can boost up the ego. When they're hating you, it could tear you down. And so I think the most important thing, there's no real easy way to get around it. But what I kind of think about, and I haven't had to face that to the extent that so many athletes do, like, starting college quarterbacks, any starting college player on a big team has to deal with that to a huge extent. And so what I try to remind myself of with that kind of stuff, and I've been thinking about this lately, is it's not real in a way. And what I mean by that is, like, when you go through life, everything you do, everyone you interact with day to day, that's your real life. It's real interactions you're having. Social media has opened up this whole world where you're getting all these inputs from other people who you would never talk to, and their opinions would never reach your like mind at all. So we see this on social media in so many aspects. There's like different, with political stuff, all the above, there's echo chambers, and there's so much stuff going on, and it's completely unnatural. And in a way, it's not real. So if I was talking to an athlete who was going through it, I would just have to remind them, like, I would distance yourself from that, because really what's going on in your day-to-day life, the people that you spend time with, the people that you interact with, the things that you do, that's really what your life
Yeah.
is.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
life is not what these profile pictures on Instagram say about you.
Yeah. And those people that are in your inner circle, they're not commenting on that stuff.
Exactly.
They're not putting that stuff out there. They're coming to you directly and try to help you. They're not bashing you. And
100%.
and when you're doing great, they're telling you that too. But I mean, that's such a big point, Weston, with social media, with in today's world, these athletes, when they're dealing with tough things, they can't even hide.
Yep.
They can't go into their dorm and say, okay, or their apartment and shut the door. It's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's on Twitter, it's on TikTok, it's all over the place,
Yeah.
and it's not even sometimes them putting stuff on your feed, they're blowing up somebody else's stuff talking about it.
Yep.
Man, that's got to be so difficult. Well, what about from the school's perspective, and I don't know how involved you got with the school, but were there any resources that the school provides for these student athletes or the students when they're dealing with really difficult times, difficult things? Are there people to go to? Are there resources to touch on? Is there anything available out there that you've seen?
Yeah, I think CU does a great job with that. I'm in some programs in school that are completely unrelated from athletics, and they basically have like different therapists and people that you can meet with for free through the program, which I think is huge. And then also I've heard I think the sports teams have a similar thing. They have therapists that the athletes can go to. And so I think my school, like from what I've seen, does a great job with that, which I think is super good and super important, because even just having someone to talk to and be open and
Yeah,
honest with someone who's not going to judge you, someone who doesn't have ulterior motives and
yeah,
isn't just talking to you because they want to get something from you because you're an athlete and you have clout and you have attention and all these things is so important, just to have a genuine connection.
yeah.
And so I think that stuff is great. And my school does a great job of it, which I'm glad to see.
That's great. Well, you said before you're a Tom Brady fan, right?
Yep.
So have you seen his videos about therapy?
Yeah. I actually saw one recently on a
Yeah,
YouTube ad. Yeah.
yeah. He comes out and says, "Listen, I've been going to therapy for 25 years."
Yeah.
He's like, "Things are tough, man." He's like, one of the things he said, he goes, "What do you think? I'm Superman?" Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like I'm going. I need to talk to people. He grounds them. It keeps him, in control.
Yeah. 100%.
I can only imagine what his social media feed blows up
Oh
to.
my gosh.
You know.
Whew.
So
Yes.
so so let's talk about your social media. What's your message? What are you trying to accomplish? Yeah, again, you're on YouTube, you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok. If you can say, "Hey, this is my message, this is my foundation, this is what I'm trying to accomplish, this is where it's at, this is where it's going," talk about that.
Yeah. So the sole reason that I do it and the initial reason that drove it was I just wanted to tell younger athletes things that I wish I would have known when I was their age. That's like the sole reason behind it. And so the kind of athlete that I'm targeting is an athlete who loves their sport and is super passionate and dedicated and hardworking, but is facing those obstacles, feels like they might not be getting the opportunities they want, might not be super talented, but loves what they do and want to improve at it, and is just dedicated and in love with their sport. That is the athlete that I'm targeting, because that's who I was as a kid. And so anything that, if I could go back and talk to my younger self, my 15, my 14, my 16-year-old self, I would have so many things to say. And so that's what I think about when making the videos. Like, I'll think past scenarios of myself, middle school, high school, whatever it may be. Think, all right, what would I say to myself in that scenario? And then I just make a video about it. And so that's really the sole thing that drives my videos. And I hope that there's athletes out there who see it and like because I think I've been in their shoes. And so I hope they can sense that I relate to where they're coming from. And I've been through it. So I hope that the things that I think about and have been through and can share with them are helpful.
So how can they find you?
Yeah, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, just my name, Weston Wolkov. And then on Instagram, it's Weston Wolkov Training, but TikTok and YouTube is just Weston Wolkov. So if you look up my name, I should pop up. Pretty
Yeah,
easy.
all you got to do is follow you once, and then boom, then it
Yeah.
feeds you. So what's next for you? What if you could fast forward? You're out of school now. Fast forward. What's going on in your life? What are you hoping to do? What do you want to accomplish? What's the impact you want to make?
Yeah. So as I said, I'm studying business. And I think I have a very entrepreneurial mind. So eventually my dream one day is to do something entrepreneurial in the sports world, going along with this passion of wanting to help younger athletes. I could see myself maybe opening up a training facility and working with younger athletes, sports psychology, and also the sports performance side, training the body, training the mind. I think that that's going to become huge in the coming years, is that combination of not only training the athlete physically, but training the athlete mentally. And as we've been talking about this whole time, it's so important, not only how you perform on the field, but also your habits and what you have off the field to deal with the stresses of being an athlete. So I think that's super important. And so I don't have a super clear vision yet. I definitely, my first thing I'm doing now is obviously the social media. And I want to expand that to like some sort of online community where I'm doing training programs, different mindset courses, like more detailed, structured out stuff of my videos. That's kind of my next step. But down the line, I would just love to do something entrepreneurial, something where I feel like I'm making an impact on younger athletes and helping them grow as people, as athletes, physically, mentally, all the above, because that's what I'm really passionate about.
Oh, it's obvious. You know, it jumps right off the page, which is great. So I've asked you a million questions, right? And I appreciate your openness and talking about stuff, because some of this stuff's pretty personal, right? Is there anything else that I haven't asked you yet, Weston, that you think we should talk about that people out there should know?
Yeah, I think the one message I would like to give to anyone who's watching, any young athlete or anything else, this is something I think about a lot, but it's just like the power of going all in on something is something I think about a lot. And I'm happy I did that with my athletic career, even though it didn't work out how I planned it and how I wanted it. It didn't necessarily work out on paper. Because I went all in on my goal, I grew so much as a person, and I had to grow into the kind of person who could accomplish that goal. And so I think anything that someone does, the best thing you could do is just go all in. And I don't think the opposite of success is failure. I think the opposite of success is doing nothing. So I think whatever you're doing, it's easy to try to protect yourself from failure by just not trying, because then you don't have to fail and the pressure's off. But I think people should be looking to put that pressure on themselves. And even though it's hard and it's challenging, if whatever you're doing and whatever someone's passionate about, if they can go all in on that thing, whether or not it works out like they originally planned, I think that's where all the growth comes from. And I think that's a lot of the beauty of life, is everyone has their obsessions, their natural inclinations. And I think if everyone were to go all in on those things and have the courage to go after it, if I could send one message to people, that would be it. So
That's awesome. There's your title. That you should call that on all your videos, all in, going
yeah,
all in, something like that. It should be your theme,
yeah, sure.
which is awesome. But Weston, listen, man, this has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to jump on here and share your story and your message, because this is continuing to grow and to evolve for me too. And there's more and more people watching and listening. And there's a lot of young people out there, men or women, young girls, boys, that are thinking about college sports. They don't know what the next step is going to be, especially if they're thinking, do I go 1, 2? What do I do? I don't know. And I love, like, you put it all out there. There is no second guessing you. And you are not going to be 55 one day and say, hey, what if? You're going to say, hey, 55, I went all in, man. I gave every ounce I got. And you know what's cool about that is, you picked this up from somebody, your parents, coaches, whatever, and built it into your head, but you're going to put it into your kids and somebody else's kids and so on. And you're going to impact so many people going forward. I just can't wait to see what you do. For such a young man, you got so much in front of you time-wise. I can only imagine what you're going to be doing by the time you're only 30.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm excited to see.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on. It was great.
Hey, no problem. And I'm going to have you back. Once
Awesome.
you get out of Colorado, you get to your next step. Good. I'd love to have you back and see if we can keep telling your story going further.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.